Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It is your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a famous first, the first full titanium Royal Oak Perpetual calendar. It's the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar China Limited Edition, an 88-piece titanium limited edition for the Chinese market from the 2020 model year. It is built in the 41mm Royal Oak case, again, all grade 5 titanium, 9.6 millimeters thick. If we just count the lug-to-lug measurement across the case, it's 50.6 millimeters. If we measure these little intermediate plots, then the total distance across the wrist is a beefier 53.5 millimeters. Now, being all titanium, it is very light, so weight on the wrist is not going to be the limiting factor ergonomically. It's going to be the span across the wrist. We'll take a look at it on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist, and I'll let you be the judge. But I think my wrist is probably the minimum size for this. I think if you were to get any smaller, maybe you could pull off 15. That's the over the top. Those lugs look like they're right out to the edge. Now you can see down the barrel, the bracelet does flare out a little bit. And yes, I could pull it in a little bit tighter, so maybe 15 could pull this off. I think it's only going to work on a 15 centimeter circumference wrist if your wrist is really flat across the top. Mine is, so just use that as your exemplar. Now it's thin enough. With a sloped bezel and 9.6 millimeter thickness, it will fit underneath the dress cuff. Very light. Grade 5 titanium is hypoallergenic, like all titaniums. But what's really nice is it's both lighter than 316 steel and more scratch resistant, so the best of both worlds. Now, it takes 9 to 11 hours to hand finish a Royal Oak bracelet, and that includes the clasp. And it's definitely going to be towards the longer end of that scale, closer to 11 for titanium, which is very difficult to finish precisely. Every Royal Oak is hand-finished extensively. Bezel, case, lugs, bracelet links. You can see even these little intermediate links that sit mostly inside the larger links, they've been satinated on their top and polished on their ends. Superb detail. Look at this expanding bevel that flares out over the lug hoods and then continues perfectly aligned down the links. Look at the directional contrast between the vertical satin on the flank of the links and the longitudinal satin that runs down their top. Little things to look for that really set these apart. Removable links, and there's quite a few of them, are fixed in place by screws. Internally, the clasp, which is quite beefy for a watch that's more dress than sports. It's a double fold, internally media blasted and satinated. It is a sequential close. The logo closes second, and then it has twin triggers. And this is just a very beefy, overbuilt clasp for a watch that probably doesn't need this much security, but it's nice to have. And you do have to press both triggers in order to open the clasp. Taking a quick look, Gerald Genta, who designed the original Royal Oak in 1972, fancied himself a jewelry designer first. That was his passion. So when he designed the Royal Oak, he wanted to create a bracelet for a man that just happened to include a timepiece. So he was designing something that was supposed to read as a jewelry bracelet, and he did, integrating the timepiece into a rounded octagonal bezel that was inspired at the time by a vintage diving helmet. Now you can see how complex that bezel really is. Its outer face is satinated. Its rounded flank has been polished, and then its top is vertically satinated. You can also see how on every Royal Oak the bezel gasket is slightly expressed as a very minor but always present styling element. The crown here is screw down, but the watch is 20 meters water resistant, so don't take it swimming. Splash and rain only. Pusher adjusters on the flanks for the Perpetual calendar. The crown is hexagonal, and you will note that the bolts inside of the bezel, and they are recessed inside the bezel, they are white gold and hexagonal, and they are bolts. There's nuts on the inside of the case. That's how it's possible to align the slots all the way around. The dial features a Perpetual calendar with moon phase and weekly calendar. So we get the week of the year, culturally appropriate Chinese red. That's one of the flourishes that localizes this watch. You can see the flange outboard adds some depth. It also serves as the scale for the weekly calendar. It has cruciform symmetry, which is quite fetching. The hands, the indices are white gold, and there's plenty of luminescence. The reason the hands and the indices are white gold is it resists tarnish and oxidation over time. The dial features the Grande Tapisserie. It is the large hobnail, not the mega that you find on the offshore, and not the petite that you find on the jumbo. This is the Grand, and as you can see, it features the same pantograph cutting technique that you get on the jumbo. The mega is stamped. This is still pantograph cut, made artisanally using a 19th century style mimicry engine. And then it's galvanized gray, and you can see that we've got polished chapter rings for each of the sub-registers to add some richness. The moon phase, which is photorealistic, sits on an aventurine glass base, a detail I adore on modern Royal Oak Perpetual calendars. Flip it all over. You can see there is the auspicious model edition of 88 pieces calculated for East Asian consumption. Some of these were sold in Singapore and Hong Kong, not just mainland China. Places that were culturally Chinese that have AP dealers did get a few of these, so you'll sometimes see them there. There is a sticker over the case back, which somewhat dulls the detail of the beautiful caliber 5134 automatic movement. This is a 5134. It's based on the JLC 920 that was created for AP, Patek, and Vacheron in 1967 and only ever used by those three companies. In the modern era, AP makes this and finishes it in-house, so it's now an in-house caliber. AP calls the base the 2120. With the addition of the Perpetual calendar, it becomes the 5134. Now, it features a beryllium ring all the way around. You can see it. The rotor goes all the way around. There's a mass on one side, and the result is that the rotor itself and then the mass can be sunken very close to the bridges and the plates, but by putting 4 ruby roller bearings, one at each corner, the beryllium ring and the mass cannot actually contact the plates or the bridges. That helps to make the base movement itself only 3.05 millimeters thick. Actually, it's just 2.45 without the date complication added, so it's a very thin automatic winding base with a 40-hour power reserve. It beats away at 2.75 hertz, which is kind of quirky and vintage. Pivots on 38 joules. You can see it's got a free-sprung Jaramac style balance for precision adjustment and durability. This is a much more hand-finished movement than the other stuff you'll see in APs. Forget the 3120s, the 4401s, forget the new 7121 and the new jumbo. The old JLC base was finished finer, and where that's most evident is on the quality of the beveling. Finished finer than those newer AP movements, and this is old school. This is the way you want it. This is a legendary and highly sought movement. It will not disappoint. And of course, it's a perpetual calendar, which means you don't have to worry about resetting the calendar until the year 2100, and the moon phase has an adjustment interval of once every 122 years. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.